This video is to document the Rostock Mini Delta Effector that I am putting up on Thingiverse. This design solves a couple of problems that I've had with the Rostock Mini for quite some time. One of the things is it's just such a small effector that there's not really room to put anything. You can put a cooling fan for the cold end of your hot end, but usually those are fan mounts that are off to the side. And then if you want to do a Z probe, most of the Z probe designs that are out are for the larger printers, and it's really kind of a hassle to try to find a place to stick it on the printer. This Z probe does need to be cut quite a bit. I'm just in the middle of building it though, but I just wanted to go over a couple of the features of this design. First and foremost, the groove for the J head is built into the platform. It's one piece. This whole thing is one piece. This makes the design quite a bit more rigid, and in addition to that, it allowed me to get the J head further down so that it would give me some additional room for the probe and the cooling fan. Normally the groove sits on top of this part with a couple of screws going in there, and then there's a cap on top of that that locks the top of the J head, but I found that added additional weight, and I just didn't like the design. It introduced a little bit too much play. So what I've done is I've made this groove. There's a little bit of a cut out there, so you push the J head in from the bottom, and then you slide it into place, and there's enough room there for the clearance. So once that's done, you put the cap on here, and it'll lock it down pretty solid. The fan mount here is for a 30mm fan. It's designed to go right up against the cold end part. There's also a couple of grooves here to allow access to these screws. This is about the 7th or 8th revision of this effector. I went through quite a few design problems. So, as far as my Z-axis probe is concerned, this isn't really too much of a new design. There are others on Thingiverse, but what I've done differently here is similar to other designs where a safety pin is used. I found that the process is usually to use a slanted backstop here to catch the probe when it's in the stored position. What I elected to do is just put a hook, an extra bend and a hook here on my wire. So as the probe is pushed up into the store position, it's caught by this hook, and this extra bend just adds a little bit of extra force to kick it over here. So there's not really any stop on the effector platform itself, and that needed to happen because this part is designed to be printed upside down like this. It's completely flat, so you don't have to worry about any overhangs. You will need to put one bit of support right here in this overhang. I could have machined this or designed it so that it came all the way to the bottom, but these rounded edges here, I didn't want to interfere with those in case anyone's got any kind of ball ends or something on the normal Rostock Mini. I didn't want to interfere with those designs, so I did design it where it comes flat up here, and it does require a little bit of a support structure, but not much. This is the switch that I'm using. It's a micro switch. It's a VT1600 1C2. In case anyone's interested in how the operation of this works, is you have a bent rod that contacts this switch, and you have usually a lock collet. This is a 1/8 of an inch lock collet. I'm using an 1/8 of an inch piece of brass wire, or brass rod that's got a 90-degree bend in it. This is just a spring from a ballpoint pen. Once the probe contacts the bed, it opens the switch and allows the printer to map the bed. When you are ready to store the probe, you move the probe to the edge of the bed where the J head can clear it and go below the build platform, and you just depress the effector downward until it clears this edge here, and then this wire just kicks it over and captures it. Likewise, when you go to print, you can either manually kick this over, or you can force your effector to rub up against a vertical rod or one of your belts to catch this wire, or to catch this rod, and as soon as it clears that lip, it snaps into place and it's ready to probe again. Couple of issues with the design, with this type of design that I've seen, is where the spring, this is just the bottom end of a safety pin here. One part of it's, let's see if I can get it. One part of it is bent and pushed into this part. And the coil at the bottom that kind of acts as a spring and the safety pin is where a M3 screw is threaded through. And then this part is just bent, to shape. But the problem is right here where this M3 screw is in this part of the wire, there's not really much clearance. And what I found is that it sometimes creates a little bit too much friction. So when you go to deploy the rod, it usually rubs right there and keeps it from deploying. To combat that, what I did was, if you look, if my phone will focus, you can see that it is ground down right there, so it's not completely round. There is a bit of a groove, and that's to make the rod thinner in that spot so that it doesn't have any issues clearing that. The only other gotcha is that when you set this lock collet, what you want to do in this design is put it in a stored position and leave a little bit of room for compression so that the bed can go down about another millimeter or so. That'll allow you to move it without having to worry about it jamming. You also need to keep this as short as possible. This probe is way too long. I just have it in here for build purposes, but once the J head's in here, I'm only going to be able to get about probably about 2 millimeters below this lock collet before it would strike the bed or strike the rest of your plastic parts when you're printing. So it does need to be cut short. It doesn't really matter when it's in the stored position or the deployed position. No, it can stick out considerably further as long as your firmware allows you to have a Z offset for your probe, because it will be considerably lower than your nozzle. I think that pretty much covers most of this design. There's an opening here for the wire, of course, for the 40 millimeter or the 30 millimeter fan. I also left a couple of openings here so that the wiring for the thermistor and the heating element can be threaded up through here, because once the J head's in here, it starts to get kind of busy. And I did leave the additional holes here for the M4 screws around the perimeter in case somebody wants to attach additional peripherals. I will be adding another mount for an additional 30 millimeter fan for cooling the extruded plastic. But for the initial build, I'm just relying on a 40 millimeter server case fan that I've got, which is separate from my effector that I just use to blow across the print area, and that works pretty well for me. So I'll go ahead and post the models online, as well as the additional part here that holds the top of the J head in. Thanks for watching.